Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Help for HDTV. Today, we will be talking to Ashley, and we're talking about a hard subject, but a subject that needs to be talked about. And I think we're actually pretty open about talking about this subject in our community because we know that the chances of us facing this are, at this point, 100% that we will face it because we do not have a therapy or treatment or cure for Huntington's disease. Today, we'll be talking about end of life. And so I'm going to start and just lead right into the show. And Ashley, welcome and thank you for coming on with us today. And
Thank you.
yeah, if you can just tell us a little bit about how HD became a part of your life.
Um, I met Timothy in 2000. Officially, I met Timothy in 2009 or 2008, 2009. He was going through a divorce. I'd already been divorced. I had always known Timothy my whole life, to be honest with you. But after high school, I had moved away, joined the military. So when I moved back home, he, his first wife was someone that was close to our family of some sort. They knew each other. So I've always known of Timothy growing up, things of that nature. And when you knew of Timothy's family, you knew his mother was sick. That was just what was always labeled as. And a funny story is actually my senior year of high school, I had to do community service work. And I had went to a nursing home and did my community service work. And a friend of mine was there, and she was like, "Hey, that's Timothy." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember him at school." And I said, "Who's that?" She said, "That's his mother. He's sick. She's sick with Huntington's." And I was like, "Okay." And I never thought anything else of it, but that was just one thing you knew in the small town we're from, that it was just a part of his life, his family, part of the family members' lives, because his mom was sick, his uncle was sick. Of course, his brother has it, as we know of, still has it, maybe still living, we're not sure. But when I met Timothy, my sister tried to get us together. I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that. We'll see," just because I knew he was fresh off a divorce. And funny enough, his ex-sister-in-law called me and said, "Look, I really think you would be good for him." And I was like, "Okay, we'll see." So we started talking, and just long story short, within 4 months, we were engaged. I can honestly say, like, when we got married, we chose not to say in sickness and health. We just talked about love, because one thing I told Timothy was, I feel like God has brought us together because in the end, love is what's going to get us through anything. Whether you get sick, I get sick, whatever it is, that's what's going to get us through it. And I said, and I feel like one thing he asked me, he says, don't I don't want my fate to be that you leave me one day if I do get sick. And I told him, I said, because that is the fate that some of his family members have had. The spouse has left. And I told him, I said, "I won't ever do that to you." I said, "Whether if our marriage never works out or not, I will still be there for you. I'll still take care of you. I'll do whatever I've got to do for you, because regardless if you get sick, nobody should have to go through this." I started learning. We went through an incident where how we figured out he was possibly getting the disease was his stepmother, who basically raised him because his mother was sick his whole life. She suffered a stroke. And during that time, we found out that she had a fast growing brain tumor. So during this time, Timothy got shingles
Hmm.
during this time. And then we started just noting some things about him. I started noticing he was falling into a deep depression because she was on hospice for about a month and a half. And I just started noticing some changes in him. And he finally told me, he said, "I think I have Huntington's." And we got married in 2010. So this is fast forward to 2014. I said, "Okay." And then honestly, I was seeing some changes. Like, I was seeing he was having more accidents at work with simple things as the tremors in his own hands. One day I remember he was pouring out some hot grease. Why he poured it out hot, and then two, how it ended up on the same hand that he poured out the pan with. It was just things of that nature was like going on. And when I questioned, "How did this happen? What was going on? What were you thinking?" It's like he couldn't tell me. And I started noticing that when I talked to him, he was slower to respond. It was the conversations were getting slower. He couldn't think as fast as he normally did. And it wasn't constant all the time. It was just little things I was seeing. And so when he finally said, "Want to I'm going to go see a doctor. And we started out seeing a doctor here locally who immediately sent us for a consultation at UAB with Dr. Sung. And he point blank looked at him and said, yeah, you, without even having the genetic testing, he's seen that he had it. I took it upon myself at that point when I started learning and researching more, and we were meeting with the physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist. They told me the things that were coming, the things that we would have to change eventually. So I looked at Timothy and I said, we're going to start changing our lives now. So simple things as wide open spaces in our home, moving the furniture, started using thicker handle spoons and forks and knives, any handicap accessible things that I knew that he was going to need in the near future. Not so much that we started using them, but I made them a presence in the house because I was just noticing with Timothy, his symptoms that started affecting him first was the depression, the anxiety, the like he just couldn't, he wasn't getting emotional anymore. As we had those bigger changes of needing to make those changes, and we were going to UAB and they were telling, okay, we need to start introducing this. And my husband was like, she's already done that. And we're already doing that. I just took it upon myself to be the change in his life because he grew up seeing his family members being eventually just thrown in a nursing home. He's seen them just struggling with anger and not being on the proper medicine, not seeing the proper doctors. And I granted know back then medicine is so far advanced than what it used to be. But I just took it as part of my passion and my love for him that like I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you have the best life possible regardless of when you have to stop working, when you can't no longer drive, when you can't no longer go on vacations anymore. Um, just I'm going to do everything possible for you. And so that I made that my goal. And I honestly get, I get told so much by everybody, like, you're going to earn your crown, from God, like everything you've done for him. Because so many people know the history of his family and this disease. And I said, y'all have to understand that God gave me the biggest honor by bringing him into my life because I would take on this disease for 10, 20 more years if it meant that I could have more time with him.
It sounds like then that you didn't let Huntington's define him, you let him be himself. So it's
Yeah.
like people were saying he's going to get sick, he's going to do this. And you were just like, no, he's Timothy, he's someone I love. So you didn't let
Yeah.
people trying to define him define
Yeah.
your decision
Yeah.
making.
And like simple little things like when it got to where he would get stuck on things with, I remember one time he just forgot how to sweep. Like he couldn't use a broom. He didn't know the concept of using a broom. So I said, okay, we're going to focus on one task we know that you can do every day. So he I said, okay, you're going to wash the clothes. So he washed the clothes and he did it for the longest. I think he stopped washing clothes officially in like 2019, but I still made him get up and help me. So it was simple things as, well, I can't pour the laundry detergent anymore. I said, okay, that's fine. We're going to switch to Tide Pods. So we switched to Tide Pods. Or I can't pull the laundry basket or pick up the laundry basket anymore. I said, okay, we're gonna get one with wheels. I can't pick it up or I can't just bend over as much anymore. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna stand here with you. You can pick one piece up at a time and put it in there. But when it comes to transferring it to the dryer, you'll be there with me, but I'm gonna help you do it. It was things like that. I never, even though like things were getting harder for him, no matter what task it may be, I found a way for him to still be involved and still do it. And I assisted him, but it was just, I still made it look like he was doing it. I wanted him to feel like he was doing something because I knew that once he just gave up, he he would go downhill. I felt like faster.
And purpose is important to every living being. Everybody wants to feel like they're contributing in some shape or form. So I love that you you provided that for him.
Mhm.
And just from the brief time that we were able to talk about Tim and your story, and I know where this kind of story is headed, which all of you will join us here soon. It's interesting to me just how prepared you were, how proactive you were, and then how things started shifting towards the end of life for Tim. And I think it's important to talk a little bit about what Tim and you were experiencing as far as symptoms or behaviors, any medication changes, like towards the end, maybe the last 6 months of his life. What did that look like for you both?
So when I'm gonna say, when I look back, like at January of 2023, I started noticing a difference in his weight. So we went from it, large clothing to medium clothing because he's 6'1". So he's it's like he's not really ever been big, but like he's tall, so he carries his weight. So when I looked at him and I started noticing within January, I was like, "What? He's losing some more weight." So what was really hard for me to understand, and I guess this is where I was trying to get answers when I would talk to doctors, or we would have, or I would call them, or whatever it may be. I was like, he's eating like crazy though. And I guess that's where, and maybe one thing I will always say is I feel like in every stage of Huntington's and our journey with Huntington's, both me and Timothy we're always in a different stage of denial. To be honest with you, that's just what I felt. So when Sept I would say about September is when I really started seeing a lot. Medium clothing was starting to get big now at this point. And I'd beg him to get on the scale, and he would never do it because I think his fear of knowing he was losing weight, he just didn't want to physically see the number. And I started noticing he was just getting really obsessive about food. He wanted to eat all the time. And I would tell him all the time, I said, I think I spend about $1,700 in groceries a month because he was eating excessively, whether it was chocolates or because had a big sweet tooth, and eggs or peanut butter. Like peanut butter was a huge thing for him because it was just easy for to eat as we were getting to the soft foods. And he would get angry and frustrated with me when it's like he was never full. He just was always hungry and he couldn't understand why. He would wake me up at midnight and say, I'm hungry, things like that. So I started noticing that he went from sleeping all the time to not sleeping at all. He was he constantly wanted to be up walking around, and I would say, Timothy, you need to sit down because you're going to fall. And he couldn't understand that because in his mind he was walking, and I would ask him, I said, do you feel like you're walking? And he said yes. And another thing with the speech, that was one thing that he was so self-conscious about, was his speech. So we went from, my mother would say, how do you understand him? And I'm like, you got to look at his mouth. And then I would say, he would say one word, 1 and 2 word syllables he done really well with. So when you start getting towards the end of that sentence, it was just like a slur, like it just straight slur. So I would say one word at a time. The problem with his thinking was it takes him longer to respond. So luckily, it was like a teaching moment every day with him because he was forgetting. It was almost like, I hate to say it, like he was forgetting to think, he was forgetting to talk, he was forgetting what he was saying, how he reacted to me on things. If his eyes lit up, his eyes were one thing, like I always seen. So I learned what he wanted and didn't want. So it made things easier. But like I said, the obsessiveness and being mean. My husband has never been mean to me ever. He so these last 3-4 months, I broke a lot because he would look at me and say, "You don't care about me. You don't do nothing for me." And then I would say, I knew that wasn't him. Like I knew. But I had my moments where I was short-tempered with him, that I just walked away or whatever it may be. But seeing that side of him was, I think, the hardest thing for me, because my husband has never been mean to me like that. And then when he would get frustrated and he would say things like, I'm sorry. And even times when he wasn't doing anything at all, I would hear him repeat, I'm sorry. So he knew when I lost them, those moments, whatever I call them, I would tell him, I'm like, you're having what we call your Alzheimer's moments, because you're forgetting so quick. You're getting angry, you're getting mad. In December, he had it twice. The first time, luckily, I seen this video on TikTok where this lady, this woman who had dementia, was getting mad, and she kept saying, this is not my house, this is not my house, we got to go home, we got to home. She was getting mad and angry, and so the daughter said, okay, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. And she left, and they put her in the car and drove around, and then they took her back. She realized that was her house, and so she wasn't as combative and things of that nature. So when I first had a moment with him, it was at midnight, and he woke me up and he said, I want to go. I'm going. I'm leaving. And it scared me because he never wanted to go anywhere. Leaving his house was not something he ever wanted to do. He felt comfort being at home. And I stood in front of the door. I had his walker in front of the door, and I sat in it. And he is literally trying to pull the door, pull me out of the way or whatever. And he's getting angry with me and mad at me. And it scared me, because I was like, I've never seen the side of him. And I said, okay. I said, go sit down. I said, we're going to get you ready and we're going to leave. Wherever you want to go, we're going to go. And he went and he sat down and he calmed down. And it took about 30 minutes, and it's like he snapped out of it.
Wow.
And so it's moments like that. It's like he forgot, he was forgetting where he was. He was forgetting what he was doing. He wanted to eat all the time, and if you didn't feed him or didn't get him food, I remember he would wake me up at midnight and want me to leave and go to Walmart to get him something to eat, and he got mad because I wouldn't do it. It's things of that nature, and of course the losing the weight. Like, as much as he was eating, he was still losing the weight because he was moving so much. I've always been told he will probably be bedridden towards the end. He's probably going to be bedridden. You're probably going to have to deal with all this stuff. You're going to have a sitter. You're going to have to all this. My husband was walking around constantly.
At this point, she has told us a little bit about her and Timothy's love story and about their journey they walked. But now we are going to go into a part 2 about their end of life journeys. For right now, we're going to close the show, but join us for the next episode for part 2 of this story. But for now, don't forget to this video and subscribe to the channel below and ring the bell for notifications when more videos like this come out. Until next time.